Welcome to Rare Breed Brotherhood. You weren't made to blend in. You were built to stand apart, even if that means walking alone. If you've ever felt like you don't quite fit into the typical roles that men are expected to play, it's not because something's wrong with you. In fact, it might be the opposite. You could be what most people don't even know exists, a Sigma male. Not a follower, not a leader trying to dominate, but a man who lives by his own rules with a sense of quiet power that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. Being a Sigma male isn't about labels or ego. It's about how you naturally move through life. You think for yourself. You trust your own decisions. You learn in silence, grow in solitude, and move with a kind of confidence that doesn't shout for attention. That doesn't mean life is always easy. It can get lonely, misunderstood, even judged. But if you've ever questioned everything around you, even your own thoughts, and still chose to follow your inner truth, then you already know this path isn't for the weak. This isn't about becoming something. It's about realizing who you've always been beneath the noise. If you're tired of being told how to think, how to feel, or who to be, take this as your confirmation. You're not lost. You're just not meant to follow. You're one of the rare few who were born to walk a different path, and that is your strength. Let's dive in rare breeds. Number 1, you're not antisocial. You're anti-performance. There's a huge difference between not liking people and not liking the roles you're expected to play around them. And if you're honest with yourself, it's not that you can't be social. You just can't pretend. You don't hate connection. What drains you is having to act, to shrink, to smile on cue, to carry small talk that means nothing, and to wear layers of behavior that don't feel like you. That's not socializing. That's performing. And you were never built for that. You'd rather sit in silence than fake a laugh. You'd rather be misunderstood than pretend to be interested in things that don't move your soul. You don't need an audience. You don't care to impress. What you crave is realness, the kind of presence that doesn't demand you become someone else just to be accepted. That's rare, and you know it. So you keep your energy close and your space clean. Some might call it being distant. Some might think you're cold. But the truth is, you've just developed a radar for nonsense. You know when the vibe is fake. You can feel when someone's words don't match their intentions. And once you sense that, your mind starts checking out. Not because you're rude, but because your inner peace has become too valuable to sell out for surface-level connection. You're not avoiding people. You're avoiding situations where you can't be fully yourself. That's not isolation. That's emotional self-respect. You don't want crowds. You want clarity. You don't need a group to feel whole. You just want depth. And if that depth means fewer connections, you're completely fine with that. Being anti-performance doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've outgrown the need to perform just to be liked. And that's not a weakness. That's power. Quiet power. The kind that never asks for attention but always leaves a lasting impression. Number 2, authority doesn't intimidate you. It bores you. There's a certain kind of man who doesn't flinch when someone flashes power in front of him. Not because he's arrogant, but because he sees straight through it. If you're the type who hears the word rules and instantly feels your brain tuning out, you know exactly what this means. It's not that you're difficult. It's that most systems feel like they were designed to keep people busy, not to make them better. You don't push back just to be difficult. You don't raise your voice just to be heard. What you do instead is quietly watch, analyze, and think for yourself. And when something doesn't make sense to your core, you simply won't play along. Not because you want attention, but because your mind refuses to follow anything just for the sake of tradition or control. You've probably been labeled uncooperative or hard to manage more than once. But the truth is, you'll gladly follow someone who's earned your respect. What you won't do is follow someone just because they wear a title or carry a fake sense of importance. If they're genuine, sharp, and grounded, you'll listen. If they're hiding behind a uniform or corporate language, you're already thinking about your exit. What people don't realize is that you're not a rebel. You're just allergic to nonsense. You'd rather build your own structure from scratch than follow a system that lacks meaning. That's why you don't chase positions or play politics. You move on your own terms, with your own standards. You're not out here trying to break the rules. You've just realized that most of them were never written for people like you. And that's not defiance. That's clarity. You don't need to shout to prove your strength. Your silence is your power. And that power only answers to truth, not titles. Number 3, you learn in silence what others can't in noise. There's something about silence that most people run from. They drown it out with noise, distractions, opinions, and constant movement. But not you. You move toward it. You understand that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. When the world gets loud and everyone is trying to be seen, you disappear. Not to escape, but to go deeper, because that's where real growth happens. You don't need the crowd. You don't need the echo chamber. You've figured out that the most powerful lessons don't come from applause or advice. They come when it's just you, your thoughts, and the uncomfortable truth staring back at you. While others are chasing validation, you're sitting in stillness, questioning everything, tearing down your weak spots, and rebuilding from the inside out. That's not easy. In fact, it's brutal. But it's also why your strength is different. You're not just smart, you're self-aware. You don't just react, you reflect. And that gives you an edge most people never develop because they're too busy trying to stay distracted. You face the silence most avoid, and in doing so, you come out clearer, sharper, and more grounded every time. You've turned solitude into a weapon. It's where you study your past without shame, examine your mindset without excuses, and sharpen your future with brutal honesty. No noise, no approval, just truth. And that's why when you do step back into the world, you move differently. Not louder, just deeper. Number 4. You have a surgical ability to cut people off without drama. Some people need chaos. They need loud exits, emotional scenes, and drawn-out explanations, but not you. When someone crosses the line or starts draining your energy, you don't argue. You don't announce it. You just disappear. Clean, quiet, precise, like flipping a switch. Not out of spite, but because you've reached a level of self-respect that no longer allows you to keep toxic ties alive just to avoid discomfort. You've learned that your peace isn't worth constant repair. You're not going to keep explaining yourself to people who aren't listening or just pretending to care. Once you feel that someone's presence is costing more than it's giving, you don't second-guess it. You cut the cord, not with anger but with clarity. You've simply outgrown the need to fix what was never real to begin with. People may call it cold. They might even call you heartless. That's fine. They don't understand the amount of peace you had to fight for. You've walked through too many emotional storms to let anyone drag you back into one. You don't burn bridges for fun. You just refuse to leave them standing if they lead nowhere. And what really throws people off is how calm you are about it. No warnings, no fireworks, just silence. And silence, when used with intention, is louder than any argument. That's not being petty. That's emotional precision. That's knowing the difference between temporary discomfort and long-term damage. You've learned that some people only show up when they need something. Others drain you with their chaos, pretending it's connection. You're done with that. Your space is earned now. Your attention is expensive. And once someone proves they don't value it, you don't explain. You exit. No drama, no noise. Just a clean break. Like it never even happened. Number 5. You're unapologetically obsessed with the truth, even if it's ugly. Some people want to be comforted. They'd rather hear a soft lie than deal with a hard truth. But you're built differently. You don't need to be shielded from reality. You'd rather know exactly where things stand, even if it hurts, even if it shatters your beliefs, even if it exposes something you were trying to avoid. That kind of mindset makes people uncomfortable, because truth isn't always pretty. It doesn't come with a safety net. It doesn't care about feelings. It cuts deep, exposes flaws, and forces you to grow or stay stuck. But you welcome it. You hunt it down. You stare it in the face without flinching, because you've learned that only truth can set the foundation for anything real. Whether that's your identity, your goals, or your relationships. You've probably lost a few people along the way because of this. They weren't ready to be seen without their mask. They weren't ready to be called out gently, or to be around someone who values honesty over harmony. But you've made peace with that. You don't need people who can't handle the truth, about you or about themselves. You don't sugarcoat your self-reflection either. You pick apart your mindset. You analyze your patterns. You question your own choices without ego. That's rare. That's powerful. That's the difference between living wide awake and floating through life half asleep. Truth isn't just something you seek. It's something you live by. You'd rather feel the sting of reality than numb yourself with a sweet fantasy. And because of that, you evolve faster. You cut deeper. You see clearer. It's not about being right. It's about being real. And once you've tasted that kind of clarity, there's no going back to pretending. Number 6, you don't fear losing people. You fear losing yourself around them. There's a point in life where you stop trying to keep everyone around. Not because you don't care, but because you finally realize the real cost. You've felt what it's like to shrink yourself to make others feel comfortable. You've stayed silent when you should have spoken, agreed just to keep the peace, and pretended to be okay with things that didn't sit right with your spirit. And every time you did that, a little piece of you faded. That's what you fear now. Not losing people, but losing yourself around them. You'd rather be alone in your truth than surrounded by people who only love you when you're easy to handle. That kind of peace, that kind of self-respect took years to build, and you're not trading it for anyone. Not for a relationship, not for a title, not for a seat at any table that demands you abandon who you are to keep it. You've learned the hard way that keeping the wrong people close can be lonelier than actual solitude. It drains you, it distorts you, and eventually, it changes you. So now, when the energy starts to shift, when you feel that slow pressure to bend, you notice it immediately. And instead of twisting yourself to fit, you quietly step back. Not because you're afraid to connect, but because you're committed to staying real with yourself. This isn't about pride, it's about protection. You fought too hard to know who you are. You've had too many nights where you questioned everything just to come out stronger. So no, you don't chase people anymore. You don't beg to be understood. If keeping someone means losing your center, the choice is already made, because losing people hurts. But losing yourself, that's a wound that never fully heals. Number 7, you intuitively read people's hidden motives, even when they're smiling. You've always had a strange sense about people, a quiet radar that picks up on things most others miss. You notice the hesitation in someone's voice, the way their eyes shift when they're lying, the gap between what they say and what they really mean. You don't need to dig through their past or grill them with questions, you just know. It's not paranoia, it's perception. While most people get swept up in charm or distracted by surface-level niceness, you're busy reading between the lines. You don't just hear what someone says, you pay attention to how they say it, what they avoid, the small contradictions they probably didn't even realize slipped out. And when something doesn't match, it clicks in your mind like a code being cracked. That's why fake energy makes you tired. You see the performance, you hear the carefully chosen words. But more importantly, you sense what they're trying to hide. You don't call it out right away, because you don't need to. You observe, you file it away, and by the time everyone else catches on, you've already taken a step back. You're not cold, you're just cautious. And you've learned that the most dangerous people aren't the loud ones. They're the smiling ones with soft words and hidden knives. But you're not easily fooled, because you study patterns, not personalities. You track consistency, not charm. It's not something you were taught. It's something you developed. Maybe from past betrayal, maybe from growing up in an environment where you had to read between the lines to stay safe. Either way, this ability has become your shield. And while others may think you're quiet or reserved, the truth is you're just always watching. Not with suspicion, but with clarity. You don't move based on appearances. You move based on truth. And that's what makes your presence quietly powerful. Because people sense they can't hide from you, even when they smile. Number 8, you don't need to prove yourself. You let results speak quietly. You're not chasing trophies. You're not addicted to applause. And you're definitely not interested in convincing people of your worth. While others spend energy showing off, trying to be seen, and arguing about their value, you're focused on building, creating, sharpening, not for attention, but for mastery. There's a calm kind of power in someone who doesn't need to prove a thing. That's you. You don't walk into conversations trying to sound smarter. You don't over-explain your decisions to get approval. You let the outcome speak for itself. You let your consistency speak. You let your growth speak. You let the way you move, quietly, intentionally, do all the talking. It's not that you lack confidence, it's that you've evolved past the need to broadcast it. You know exactly who you are, what you're capable of, and where you're headed. That inner clarity is louder than any boast, and you know that real strength doesn't need an audience. It just needs discipline and patience. You've learned that the loudest one in the room is usually the most insecure, so you don't play that game. You keep your plans low-key, your moves sharp, and your mind clear. When the results show up, they'll speak for you. No hashtags, no speeches, no spotlight needed. This doesn't mean you're passive, it means you're precise. You're not trying to dominate the stage. You're building something solid behind the scenes, something that lasts, something that doesn't fall apart when the hype fades. You're not in a race to be seen. You're in a quiet war to stay true to your vision. And that's what separates you. While others chase recognition, you chase excellence. And that kind of energy is rare. It's the kind that doesn't need noise, just presence. Number 9. You're immune to peer pressure, even if it costs you everything. There's a line you don't cross, not because someone told you not to, but because your soul refuses. That voice inside you, it's louder than the crowd. It doesn't care who's watching or what the trend is. When something feels off, when something betrays your values, you walk. No debate, no hesitation, just a quiet, unwavering no. This kind of strength isn't loud. It's not rebellious for the sake of rebellion. It's rooted in something deeper, self-respect. You don't bend just to avoid discomfort. You don't fake agreement to blend in. If something violates your principles, you let it go, even if it leaves you standing alone. And it's cost you. You've missed out on opportunities that required a little dishonesty. You've left friendships that turned toxic the second you stopped playing along. You've walked away from jobs, groups, and situations that many would have clung to, because you knew what staying would do to you. You've learned that peace isn't found in pleasing everyone. It's found in protecting your soul, even when the room goes silent. People might not understand it. They'll call you difficult or distant, but that's fine. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to stay aligned with what's real. That means choosing discomfort over dishonesty, solitude over selling out. Peer pressure doesn't work on you because you've tasted what it's like to betray yourself. And once you've felt that kind of regret, there's no going back. You'd rather lose everything than lose yourself again. That's rare. That's power. And that's why no one can own you, sway you, or manipulate you with social tricks. You've already decided who you are. And once that decision is made, no outside force stands a chance. Number 10. You kill your old self over and over again. Most people cling to who they used to be. They wrap themselves in their old stories, their past wins, even their past pain, because it's familiar, and comfort often disguises itself as identity. But not you. You've made peace with the fact that evolution feels like death. You don't flinch when it's time to shed your skin. You initiate the transformation. You've killed versions of yourself that once felt permanent. Versions that were too soft, too naive, too reactive, too addicted to validation, or too afraid to step into discomfort. And every time you did, it wasn't some dramatic reinvention for others to see. It was private, quiet, ruthless. You don't announce the change. You simply vanish from what you were and reappear more precise, more focused, and less forgiving of what no longer fits. This kind of growth isn't pretty. It's not the romantic version people talk about with cute quotes and morning routines. It's gritty. It's lonely. It requires self-awareness that hurts, accountability that burns, and decisions that rip your comfort to pieces. But you do it anyway, over and over again. Because you know this. Becoming better means letting the old you die. You don't keep outdated mindsets just because they once worked. You don't stay in environments just because you've invested time. You don't hold on to people who only know how to love expired versions of you. The second something starts holding you back, you sharpen the blade. You're not chasing an end goal. You're chasing refinement. You're chasing truth. And sometimes that means disappearing from old spaces, staying quiet while you rebuild, and coming back unrecognizable. Not for attention, but because growth demands it. You're not afraid to leave parts of yourself behind. You've realized your loyalty belongs to who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Number 11. You speak less, but what you say hits like a sledgehammer. You're not the loudest voice in the room. In fact, you often say nothing at all. But when you do speak, the room shifts. People pause. They lean in. Not because you raise your voice or demand attention, but because your words carry weight most people don't know how to hold. You're careful with what you say. You don't waste breath on meaningless chatter. You don't talk just to fill silence. You speak with purpose, with precision. Every sentence you drop has roots in observation, thought, and lived experience, and that makes it impossible to ignore. People underestimate silence. They think the one who talks most is the smartest, the most confident, the most in control. But you've mastered the opposite. You've realized silence is where real power sits. It makes people uneasy. It forces them to reveal themselves. And it gives you space to read everything they're trying to hide behind their words. So when you finally speak, it lands. It doesn't just get heard, it gets felt. You don't just make a point, you pierce through illusions. You don't seek applause, you shift perspectives. Your voice isn't just sound. It's a signal, a boundary, a decision. And that's why people remember it. That's why they quote you later when you're no longer around. Not because you entertained them, but because you told the truth. Clean, sharp, and unapologetically real. This is why you don't compete for attention. You've learned the value of restraint, the strength in waiting until you have something worth saying. Because when you finally do, it hits like a sledgehammer. In conclusion, the rarest ones are not loud. They don't demand to be seen. They simply can't be ignored. If you've seen yourself in these signs, even in pieces, know this. You're not broken, and you're not lost. You're just not common. You think in ways most people never will. You move with a quiet intensity that doesn't need an audience. And that's what sets you apart. Being a Sigma male doesn't mean you're better than others. It means your path is different. Quieter, deeper, and often more solitary. You aren't wired for shallow games or groupthink. You're wired for truth, for clarity, for purpose. And yes, sometimes that feels like a heavy load. You may carry silence that no one sees, boundaries that confuse others, and standards that isolate you. But that's exactly what shapes your strength. This world loves to label what it can't understand, so it might call you distant, cold, or antisocial. Let them. You don't need to explain yourself to people who haven't done the kind of inner work you've done. You don't shrink to fit. You expand in silence. You refine. You outgrow. You don't need permission to be who you are. You don't need to be louder to be respected. You don't need to chase spotlight to be powerful. Your value lies in your ability to think clearly, move intentionally, and lead your life from within. So if you've ever felt like you were out of place, maybe you were never meant to fit in. Maybe you were meant to lead yourself. Stay rare, stay real, and never trade that for anything smaller. Thank you for watching. God bless you.